And welcome everyone to an exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. As you will notice, it's just me tonight with our lovely guest. Carla is on vacation with family matters right now, so she is missed, but she promises she will be back next week. So, with that being said, I turn the screen over to Amy Green, our special guest.
Hello.
Hello. So, one question I have for you to start out with is I have known you now for what, like a couple of years. I have never referred to you as the Ice Queen.
Yes, yes, I am the Ice Queen.
So, how did that start?
Well, it's a couple of different reasons actually. I'm very cold natured. I love the cold. And then um I have a tendency I can be very cold hearted when I have to be. And so I kind of became known for that and may sound cold hearted, but at the same time I tell it like it is. I don't decorate anything. You want something sugar coated, go eat a donut. So that's that's just me.
I gotta say, I love that analogy. Go get a donut.
Yep, yep. I am the ice queen.
So, you've been investigating for several years now.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been researching and studying for oh close to 30 years, and I've been investigating for over 20. So I've gotten the opportunity to investigate some really fascinating places, some well known, some private homes, um, cemeteries and things like that. So I've kind of covered a lot of different areas. I mean, I still have a bucket list. Don't get me wrong, but I've covered a lot of areas that are fascinating to me, whether they're well known or not. And my first group that I ever had was in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and that's how we got started investigating. Was we'd hear about a place that was rumored to be haunted, and we would call managers or owners or whatever and say, "Would you welcome a paranormal investigation in your facility?" And that just really kind of opened up doors for us. And then word of mouth, we got into some bigger places, and we got, people that would come to the investigations. They'd say, "Hey, would you come check out our house?" And so that's how we got started, and it just kind of grew from there.
So, where would you say was your very first investigation that not public home wise?
My very first investigation, hmm, my first overnight investigation that was probably the most significant in it. And anybody asks me what was your favorite, not favorite, but what was the most activity you ever had, was at the Granbury Opera House. This place is fascinating. If you haven't had a chance to go, you need to go.
It is on my list.
Yes, and I mean we had everything from um, full silhouettes sitting in an area of the balcony that was closed to the public. We've had, I mean, was sitting with some of my investigators in one area of the balcony, and they were two rows above me, and I heard this noise coming from my left to my right side because I was facing them. And they had the theater chairs, that only fold down if you somebody pulls it down and sits in it. And we were sitting there, and I heard this noise, and I watched a whole row of these seats like flip down, like somebody was just took their hands and was flipping the seats down all the way down the row right in front of me. And then we set up our base camp on the stage, because it's still an active opera house, and they have troops that come in during the summer and things. And we had spotlights flashing onto the stage, and we're automatically thinking they're playing with the lights and everything, and they're like, those only come on in the booth that's up in that balcony that's locked. So we had a lot of different types of activity in this place, and that was my first overnight. We were actually the first group to get to over investigate it overnight, and that was my first overnight, and that was that was probably one of my favorites.
I can see why. I'd kind of be like going, I don't know why we'd want to go to another place. This is it. We've seen it all.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But we have other places to go, and that's that's top of my list.
Wow, that that is that would definitely be a go-to place. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, as everybody always has a like, this is one of my top places to go to because it never disappoints.
Uh huh.
Which I know we can't guarantee, but we always, if we're honest, we have that one spot that we always get activity at.
Mhm.
Is Granbury one of those for you, or is
It's one of them. Um, the other one is, and I still go out there, pretty regularly with my local group, and that's out at the Chalmette Battlefield, where they fought the Battle of New Orleans, and we whenever I'm out there, I mean, I've never been out there that we didn't get something, whether it be an EVP, whether it be a response in a ghost box, whether it be temperature changes. I mean, drastic temperature changes. And so it's my one thing about that is, though, that they do a reenactment every January, and I want to go out there the night after a reenactment and see if you get even more um, than what you do just on going on a random night. So that's in the I'm going to plan to do that like probably next January, and head out there after one of the reenactments.
it's kind of funny how you're saying the night after, because I'm sitting here thinking historian inside of me going, forget the next night. I would do it the night of
No, that's
while
what
it's all.
that's what I mean. I mean, like, you have to wait for the place to clear out because a lot of people camp there, and
Okay.
they stay there for the weekend. But like that night after the reenactment would be, I think, would be ideal.
Right. I get
Hmm.
you now. I'm sitting
Hmm.
here thinking, you're like, huh, let's give it a day to like
No,
kind
no,
of.
no,
I'm like, what?
no, 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 no.
So, being the historian I am,
Hmm.
when you say Battle of New Orleans, are you referring to the War of 1812 Battle of New Orleans or the Civil War?
No,
With
not. It was before the Civil War.
Okay, so the 1812.
Yeah, it was led by one of my distant relatives, Andrew Jackson. And if he doesn't speak to me next time I go out there, I'm gonna be very upset. But that's also the history behind that battle is also really interesting, because that is where Jean Lafitte kind of Andrew Jackson pardoned all of his crimes,
Right.
um, in order for him and his pirates to help them out, because he was on the fence as to whether or not Andrew Jackson was on the fence as to whether or not he was going to allow Jean Lafitte. He really didn't want to give him this pardon. But when he saw the influence that he had and the number of men that he had that could help in this battle, he went ahead and um, pardoned all of his crimes so that he could get his help. And I think that's one of the big things that helped win the Battle of New Orleans.
Right, because it allowed them to do like what we call in modern warfare, the like almost like a pincer maneuver, where they were trapped in between two horses smashing and they had
Yeah.
nowhere to go.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So So Mike Thomas Press has a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys ever visited Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and investigated the haunted grounds?
Actually, we did. This one, Gettysburg. I That was the first time I had ever been. It was probably summer of 2019. I went for the first time, and everybody kept telling me that you could feel the energy, and I'm like, I don't understand that. But once I got there, I you could feel it. It was, and we traveled across the country in an RV, and we were out at the campgrounds. And late one night, we were sitting around just having dinner, and all of a sudden, we heard musket shots, or we heard gunshots. And so, I mean, we're diving, ducking behind things, going, what in the? And then they went looking around and everything, called the police and all that. There was nobody out there shooting. And it just happened to be the RV park that we were staying at was part of one of the battlefields. But yeah, I mean, it was. I'm not gonna lie. I walked out there and I was in awe. I really was. But then the psychology person in me, and I'm sitting here going, this battle didn't make sense to me. Just, so I'm sitting here analyzing everything. And but we got to go up to Big Round Top, Little Round Top. Got to go to the Devil's Bowl and all that. And but it was a very fascinating place.
So, Mike, I have not done Gettysburg yet. So, I will just say if Amy says this, it's as good as gold.
It is definitely worth the trip. Not in July, though. I mean, I know that the Gettysburg Bash is every July, but it is stifling hot. And you will not want to leave the air conditioning. But it's really, really hot, but it's a fascinating place, and I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say it's stifling hot because July, you pretty much in the South are pretty much going, it's too hot to go anywhere.
Well, it's funny because we stayed in Gettysburg, but we were actually doing an investigation in Scotchtown, Virginia, at oh, good night. What is his name? It just completely give me liberty or give me death.
Patrick
Um,
Henry.
yes, Patrick Henry's house. And we were doing an investigation at his house in Scotchtown, and we were there in June. And this was a fascinating investigation, but the humidity in Virginia in June puts New Orleans and Houston to shame. The,
Wow.
the humidity was so bad. I would go back, but not in June. I just would not ever go back in June. But that,
So,
but the Scotchtown and the Hanover Tavern and all that, really, really fascinating places.
so Linda, I see your question, but before I get there, I'm going to ask. So, with Patrick Henry's home,
Yeah.
was it actually haunted? Because I'm like, from what I've read about him,
Hmm.
it's like, to me, I'd be like, historically speaking, one of the least haunted places because he was more an orator in a like in the Congress type of person, not.
But the one thing, it wasn't haunted by him. Um, the story goes that his first wife, she had 6 children, and they had 6 children together. And after the sixth one, she basically was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis.
I can
Well,
understand that.
she was a historical Andrea Yates. I'm sorry, she just was. Um, and so he went around to different sanitariums in the area, and he didn't feel that they would take care of her well enough. So he created a 3-room apartment in the basement of this house, and took her down there and locked her up down there, and she had her own set of slaves. She had her own guard, and everything, but they had to remove her from the children because she was presenting a threat, a physical and mental threat to him and the children. And so she basically was locked away in this 3-room basement apartment in this house. And she was down there for 3 years before she died.
That
So,
almost seems cruel, but at the same time, though, if he's saying the sanitariums
yeah.
would have been worse, then it seems
Hmm.
like he did the best he could.
Yeah. Because, I mean, she had an entire staff that took care of her down. But the only thing is they had to keep her locked up.
Yeah.
And but it was a 3-bedroom, basically like a 3-room apartment. She had the kitchen area where the slaves worked and cooked the meals and everything, and then she had her own quarters, and then there was another room off to the side. Um, it, once you're down there, it's a very sad situation, but they assured us when they were telling us the story that he did do proper research to find out, if is this the best course of action for her, to protect her from herself, to protect her from, to protect the kids and him and everything. And that was his conclusion, was that the sanitariums would be just entirely too harsh for her. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Would never have thought that, but
Mhm.
okay. So, Linda, as I said, I'll get to your question now. She
Mhm.
says, "Is Gettysburg a heavy-duty visit for empaths? Do we need to take extra precautions like beefing up our boundaries?"
Yes. Yes. While it is a lot of residual energy, um the residual energy is really, really thick, for lack of a better word. So yes, I mean, especially when you get onto those grounds, because they've done a really good job of making the fields and everything like they were during the battles. And where it's stripped, there's no, there's houses and there's forests around it and everything. But yes, I definitely would recommend that. Um, just protect yourself.
Yeah. And she says, good to consider going when it's cooler because we were
Yes.
discussing not in June or July.
Yes, exactly.
But I want to go back for a second to the Battle of New Orleans
Mhm.
because I think you hit on something and we kind of brushed over it that
Mhm.
I think is something that kind of is something that a lot of people may not pay attention to with the paranormal, and that is that Andrew Jackson is a blood relative of yours, or he was.
Yeah.
And so you were saying that he doesn't come and talk to you.
No.
So I just want to point out that, even though, that's an avenue that, a lot of people may think would guarantee some activity or response from someone is to have their descendant
Mhm.
on the grounds talking to them, but you're saying your experience is quite the opposite, that he doesn't come.
No, he doesn't. Mm-mm. No, at all. All the times that I've been out there, never gotten any kind of response from him. We get the most response out there at the battlefield. There's a cemetery that's on the other side, on the back side of the battlefield, and it's I don't know if it's because I feel very sympathetic in there. Honestly, there's only one soldier that's buried there that was actually at the Battle of New Orleans. The rest of them were buried there from other wars and things like that. Um, but there's rows and rows and rows of tombstones that just say unknown soldier, US soldier, unknown soldier. And I'm like, that's incredibly sad to me because that's somebody's son.
Right.
And all you've got is either a number or an unknown soldier or a US soldier. And that's just really sad to me. But we get a lot of EVPs out there.
Yeah. Well, speaking, I'm not. gonna try and make excuses for the people who are in charge of the cemetery, but
Hmm.
during the Civil War, especially,
Yeah.
you would have bodies that there was nothing to identify them by.
Yeah.
The carnage was so bad that it's like
Mhm.
you were lucky to know if they were Union or Confederate. And so I think, sadly, that's the case. I would hope is the case there, and it just wasn't people wanting to spend the money to write everybody's name out.
Yeah. I mean, but as a mom, it's still really sad to me because you're like, that's somebody's son that's buried there, and he has no name, no, nobody has been able to identify him, and he's just, it's just really sad to me.
Well, and
You're welcome, Linda. Thank you.
the even sadder thing too to think about is like someone in your situation, like if you were a descendant of somebody that's buried there,
Yeah.
how do you go and visit your ancestor's grave to pay homage to them when you don't know which one it is because nobody knows which one it is?
Right. Right. There are quite a few of them that do have names. They're mostly officers, but I mean, they do have some that have names on them, but it's just the ones that don't have any names outnumber the others.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, curious question also I just thought about is this is in Louisiana near
Correct.
New Orleans, right?
Yes.
Area.
In St.
So
Bernard Parish. Hmm.
when it floods, a lot of the graves disappeared into the Gulf.
Yeah.
So that could be another reason why the tombs say unknown is because they don't know who was put back in that spot because
This is
of
true.
the weather.
Yeah, because Chalmette got hit. Besides Grand Isle, Chalmette probably got hit the hardest with Katrina. Besides Grand Isle, um, they were probably the second hardest hit from Katrina.
Yeah. So even before Katrina,
Yeah, because that is one thing about living here is that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen again. I mean, just because of our proximity to the Gulf, um, but I mean that's just the way that it is. But that's part of living here.
right. I mean, and it's easy for people like, me being in Texas where we don't deal with flooding to joke about how the burial situations had to evolve in New Orleans and Louisiana because of the flooding.
Hmm.
To go, yeah, the reason everything's under concrete or in mausoleums is because you'd be eating breakfast and grandma'd be floating by because of the flooding rains.
Yep.
And I mean, we laugh about that, but that was reality.
Yeah.
They really saw the caskets and the bodies floating by because
Yeah. They
the
did.
cemeteries flooded out. And
I have I
so,
have I have friends who were here for it, and they've told me stories. And I wasn't here for Katrina. I was here in February before Katrina, and then I didn't come back until about 2 years after Katrina. So
yeah. So, I mean, Louisiana is one of the weird spots of when you see stuff that says unknown, it could be weather or it could be the condition of the body when it
hmm.
was found. So, yeah. So Linda commented that would be quite a job for a medium to read the gravesite to find the name. It would be a great service to the families to
Hmm.
be able to update the grave markers.
I would love it if somebody could do that. That would be huge. I think that would be if I were a medium or sensitive or anything like that, I would that would be the first place I would go and try and do that for those families.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of easy for us to say, yeah, a medium can go and identify, but there's a lot of cost involved for the city to take out that tombstone.
Oh yeah,
put
yeah,
a new tombstone in. So it
mhm,
may, in theory, yeah, a medium could go in and probably one of them, but changing the grave sites, that the tombstones, that they may be like putting a stick in with a little plaque that says, "Hey, this has now been identified as so and so."
yeah. Well, the one thing that gives me a little bit of comfort on that is that it is a military burial ground. So they did get military honors as far as getting buried. They deserve that. They
Right,
did they did serve the country, and they did get recognized for it, whether they were identified or not. It is a military cemetery, and so they at least got a little bit of recognition for serving the country.
right. And the beauty of the military with their ceremonies for burying is, like we're saying, if floods came and uprooted, they would get the services again
Yeah,
when they put them back in the ground. And so yeah, that's one of the benefits of, the niceness of our military is, like you're saying, the respect. And it's not a one time shot of, yeah, we paid honors to him the first time. We're sorry Mother Nature uprooted him, but
right.
it's like, nope, we're going to get the color guard and everybody back out, and we'll do the whole ceremony over, no question asked. You don't even have to beg or plead. It's like, all right, just tell us when and where.
Well, now, Linda has a question. She said, "You think the graves have tombstones or crosses?" No, very few of them have anything other than just like um, an oval shaped concrete block. Now, some of them that are identified, they have a couple of crosses and everything, but most of them are just this rounded concrete block. And
She's also wanting to know, was that a general grave site with one marker?
no, now each individual person buried there has got their own marker.
Yeah. One thing I will say with Texas, and I don't know if other states do this, is I have noticed when I go like Jefferson and look at some of the cemeteries there and some of them in the really small towns, is they may have the tombstone for someone, but in front by their feet is a plaque that says this person was a private in the Texas Revolutionary War, or this person was a corporal with the U.S. Navy in World War II. And so that I think is even nicer, that they're like, yes, this was an average person, but they served here. And so that I think would be something even Louisiana, if they don't do, could do, instead of changing all of them saying unknown, is to just put down general uh, battle of, in this army or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And it's a small little thing, but I mean, it means a lot and it helps people to know who's there.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
She says that's good to know each one had a marker.
Yeah. Definitely. That's it. I think it would be even more of, I don't want to say insult, but you know, completely disregarding their service to this country if they had made one big marker and said all of these are unknown soldiers or US soldiers. I think it's great that they actually made individual, headstones for each of them. So,
Right. And culturally speaking, I know I may get some hit for this comment coming, but that's from a generation. Honestly, I don't care if they do. But I personally like how you go there and it'll say during the Civil War, it'll be like, this person was a colonel of the U.S. Union Army, or this person was a private in the Confederate States of America.
Right.
I think that's important to know because both sides were serving our country.
Mm-hmm.
It was a time frame where unfortunately both sides had different opinions. They
Right.
couldn't resolve that, it ended up into a war,
Mm-hmm.
but they were still at heart Americans.
Yeah. Yep.
And
And
so
there were more lost in the Civil War than there were in World War I or two.
I know, and the sad reality
And
is
Vietnam and Korea, I think.
I don't know about Vietnam, but I know Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam
Yep.
may be close,
Yeah.
but I mean, paranormally speaking, we
Mhm.
assume battlefields would be the worst and the most active. But
Mm,
actually, I would tend to say if I was on a battlefield, I'd want to go to the hospital
yeah.
because that's where the trauma really sets in. Because when you're on the battlefield, your adrenaline's pumping and you're like, you'll just like snap to and come back to reality and be like, why am I in this tent? Why does my arm hurt?
Right.
Whereas on the battlefield, you're just like, hey, someone's shooting at me. I'm shooting back. I don't care if I'm missing a limb.
I've got
I'm
a
not
job to do.
dying here.
I've got a job to do.
Yeah. So, how many battlefields have you investigated?
Let's see. Chalmette, Gettysburg, um, briefly did Antietam.
Ooh, we're in Antietam.
I honestly do not remember. It was so long ago. I should know this. Um, because Antietam is not the biggest battlefield there is. Um, I think those three are the ones that I've investigated. Yeah, those three I've investigated. Um, but the one thing about Gettysburg, I will let everybody know: you cannot go out on the battlefield after dark. They will not let you. Um, and as much as you see this big open space and everything, you drive through there and it's completely different because they have statues. Every time you turn around, there are statues in the field that name um, what state and what regiment was based here. And there's a 3 CD set that was actually created for Ronald Reagan when he toured Gettysburg. And there's 3 discs that go for each one is a day of the battle, and it'll take you, and they narrate through it, and you go to these, you drive through, and you come to this stop, and it tells you, okay, stop here, and it tells you what happened right there, and then you go on to the next stop, and it tells you this is what happened here. It's really interesting. Of course, I'm a history buff. I love history, and so it was really interesting to hear this. But Bill and Chris were able to get one of those, and it was basically a audio tour of the battle and how it progressed and where things happened and everything.
I think that's one thing that I think lacks a little bit in the U.S. is we make these monuments like state parks to the battlefields,
Hmm.
but we really don't give the immersive like this is what conditions were like. This is what these people were facing. It's more of yeah, these soldiers were here, they did this, and so
Yeah,
here's where this cannonade was, and it's like, well, yeah, but why is that there?
right,
Why were these troops so fighting to take this section over that section?
right. Well, one of the things I go into different places and I hear this place is haunted because of this. And so I'll go in and I'll look, and like I did at Waverly. I've done 2 overnights at Waverly. And they're talking about room 502, and I'm looking up into the ceiling. I'm looking in the room and I'm looking up in the ceiling in the floor, and I'm like, even back in the day, there's not a pipe up there that would hold a body. So where did she supposedly hang from? And I'm like, but then I did the same thing at Gettysburg, and I'm like, all of these men that fought in this battle were hunters. That's what you did back then. You hunt for food and
Right.
and all this. There's trees everywhere. Hunters are supposed to be quiet, right?
Right.
Hide in the tree, find you a high hide in a tree, something like, why in the world would you send a whole bunch of men running up a bare hill that had no trees or anything, yelling and screaming? And I'm sitting here going, that doesn't even make any sense. That just it it just did not make any sense to me. I'm like, you're hunters. You should have. But I mean, I know it was very passionate on both sides. I get that.
Right.
It was very, they were very passionate about what they were defending and protecting on each side. But my analytical mind just could not wrap around the fact that, running up big round top or little round top, it's nothing but a field. Why would you send a bunch of men screaming up the hill when it would be more effective to put them up into trees and hide and but anyway, it's
I could
probably not.
answer that with one general's name, McLennan.
No. Yeah.
He was more politician than general, so he
Hmm.
was trying to make a name for himself, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like I want to say I think I got the name of the battlefield wrong, but I want to say it's the Battle of Franklin where they were crossing the river
Hmm.
and the Confederates had the high ground, but we could only move one platoon or battalion across, not major army. I mean one small section. And the general on the Union side was, well, you boys go take that. We'll send, and when the next group comes across, they'll back you up, and we'll eventually get the whole army there. Well, meanwhile, these people are behind a stone wall, cutting you down
Right.
because there's nowhere to hide. It's open field, and you're like, by the time the next group comes up, half of them are gone. It's like, what were you thinking? I mean, if you're gonna attempt an open field, at least have your full army there, cannon at the ready. But the
Yes.
cannon wasn't even ready to open fire. It was like, what was the rush? It's like, you know, what would have made what difference would it have made to wait like another half hour, an hour to get more people on the side to where you have a better shot of taking, you could overrun them by having more people in theory. But yeah, it's like that whole there are several wars in the Civil War that it's like defy logic of why they happen, where they happen.
Right. Yes, yes, Linda. They were farmlands before the battles. Yes.
Right. And yeah, I mean, we think of the towns like nowadays, like if you were to say the Battle of New Orleans, we're picturing New Orleans today.
Right. Yeah.
But back in 1812, when it was the Battle of New Orleans, it was almost like swampland.
Yeah.
There really wasn't a town.
Yes,
And
Woodstock was. Yes.
so I think that's another thing too is a lot of people when they go and investigate like the battlefields is they don't look at them from the landscape of what year was this go and what did it look like then.
Right.
Now like Vicksburg though, I went through the battlefield tour there and had a paranormal experience there.
Hmm.
But I think the reason why that is more active, in my opinion, than most is the town embraces its, like, this is what it was like. And
Mhm.
it tells you these homes were here during the war. And so it's like you start to be able to take a picture of, okay, so there was like maybe six plantations on this one road,
Mhm.
where now you see like 30 homes. And so it's like you start to get a grasp of how open this land was and how wide that siege line had to be to encompass it versus today. And it sort of makes more sense when you see the layout of the cannons and where armies clashed, because you realized, yeah, this was, you're catching someone from possibly escaping the town to go get reinforcements.
Mhm. If you ever get the chance, you go to go in that area and everything. You need to go to Beauvoir, which was uh, President. Why does this name keep escaping me? President of the Confederate States.
Jefferson Davis.
Yes, Beauvoir. That's his house. His house is really interesting. I actually attended a con there a few years ago. But and they've got it set up like a museum now. But that was his house, and that's that. I mean, it's pretty much. I mean, it's updated, obviously, with electricity and everything, but it's pretty much like it was. And I'm sure all of the, all the land that he had, some of it is still around the house, but a lot of it has been, bought, sold off, and new houses built and everything. But yeah,
Right.
if you ever get the chance, you should go to Beauvoir.
Yeah, it's almost like the Alamo in San Antonio. It was a massive structure, but all that's left is one little church, and everyone looks like, how did 300 some people stand in here? And it's like they weren't standing in here. They
Mm-mm.
were like maybe 6 street blocks.
Yeah. Yep.
So Linda's asking, and I'm going to ask a question on the back of this question is, so did you read the book series starting with Outlander?
No.
And I'm going to preface that also with the question of, have you ever investigated outside of the US?
Mm, not yet. Not yet. My ideal is a monastery in northern Italy. Um, and then, of course, you have Scotland and Ireland, and because I'm like 82% Irish, so of course I want to go visit, Ireland and all that. And there's there's so much history and everything, and but a lot of that is going to be very, in my opinion, I could be completely wrong. Very little of that is actually an intelligent haunting. It's just residual energy. Um, now the monastery in northern Italy apparently is very active, very intelligent, very spooky. Um, but I'm going to go to places that I'm seeing that there's actually interaction. Um, but I haven't yet, but it's on my list.
So I've had a few experiences international, but not
Mm-hmm.
as a paranormal investigator as before I started.
Mm-hmm.
But so with Outlander, have you read the books and are you familiar with the show?
All I know is that didn't it take place in Scotland?
So it starts out in Scotland, but right now they're in the Carolinas, and it's pre-Revolutionary War time. It's like they're
Okay.
starting to get the colonies are getting their feathers ruffled and starting to talk about rebellion. And so I think the upcoming season is supposed to be more of the either rebellion have started or is going to start, and what part that the characters took place in there.
I have a bad habit of I don't watch things I have to keep up with. I just, it's hard for me to keep up with things like that. So, but I mean, it's the history is really interesting, and my housemate is very much into that. Um, only other thing that I know about Outlander was one of the guys that was on the show um, was at the last Comic Con here in New Orleans back in January. Um, and I saw him in passing walking to my office. Um, but that's about all I know about it, really.
Yeah. So Linda comments, Diana Gabaldon. I'm probably butchering that last name. Gabaldon. Yeah, that's as many attempts I'm going to make at that. Took the characters from Outlander in Scotland and eventually sailed them over to America. There was talk of fighting going on from the trees.
Hmm.
And so, and they do have the Indian skirmishes and them trying to make peace with the Indians as well. Um, she says Diana started out as a scientist and took her researching abilities into writing. Enjoy her writing very much.
Well, if
Now,
she's writing in detail about all this other stuff, then she's obviously very talented. So,
well, and the one thing I will say that for the fans of Outlander, if you like in your situation, you don't want to keep up with the show.
hmm.
Each show is one book.
Oh,
So one season, one book. So I think we're getting into season 7 now, and so I think there's 9 books.
oh wow, okay.
So I mean, you could theoretically just read the books whenever you wanted and be like, okay, you don't even need to watch the show. Or from what I understand is if you don't want to take the time to read the books, is you could always catch the show on replay because I think they try to keep as close to the book as they can.
Hmm. I watch a lot of I watch very little regular TV. I watch a lot of true crime. A lot of watch a lot of things like that. And it's interesting. We're getting into different subjects and everything, but I've recently gotten into these two shows that I've watched about Bigfoot. And I've never really paid attention to Bigfoot and that sort of thing until about 3 years ago when I was in Ohio and I heard it 3 times. And
Wait, you heard a Bigfoot 3 times?
mm-hmm. And it
Walking
turned
or howling?
howling. And it turned out that the week before we got there, a woman actually saw one in the woods next to the place that we were. So, but that's the extent of my TV is like basically true crime and trying to investigating different places and um, I don't usually don't watch too many paranormal shows. Um,
Right.
uh, if I do, it's just like to get ideas of places to go. Um, so,
Well, the interesting thing why I think Outlander came up
mm,
is because there is I don't think it's by Inverness, but there is a circle of stones
hmm.
that are by legend in Scotland that have magical powers to them. And so the idea is this lady from the 1940s who was a nurse
Hmm.
was married, goes and gets called by music, I think it is, to the stones. And when she touches the stones, she's transported to like the 1730s, 1740s
Hmm.
Scotland.
Right.
And she doesn't figure out how to come back, until, without spoiling much for the show, is she does figure out how to travel back and forth. But I think that's the paranormal aspect that kind of catches everybody's attention is she's able to live a life in both timelines.
Mhm. Okay.
And
So it's
so
more than
it's
just it's more than just a time slip.
right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's really interesting to see how she has to cope with knowing what she knows from the 1940s
Mhm.
during World War II in the 1700s and being like, what her knowledge as a medical will end up getting her called
Mhm.
and what her life is going to be like. And yeah, and so it's interesting to watch the dynamics of how she's got the strength to do some things because she has some knowledge being from the future, but she doesn't have all the knowledge. So
Right.
it's like she does kind of make some mistakes. So it's a really interesting show actually
Hmm.
to see how well written it is. I mean, it is, and it's on Stars, and so it's not like some of those shows like the local networks will do where it's like, yeah, so and so does this, okay, yeah, and then every week like Quantum Leap. It's not
Mhm.
one of those where he jumps all the time into something else.
Right.
It's a whole life that she builds in both timelines.
Hmm. Yeah, that takes creativity to be able to write like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you might want to check it out.
I might try that. Yeah, because I know that my housemate watches it, and she's seen everything, and she has everything, and that has to do with Outlander and everything. So I may have to check that out.
Yeah, and the one thing that's interesting too about Outlander is season 6 got cut short because of COVID. And so they apologized for it and filmed like, I think it was like 4 or 5 episodes
Mhm.
when they started being able to again and said, hey, we're going to quickly launch, these. And yes, we're going to come back for more seasons. And they kept the fans informed. And because they couldn't film Outlander, two of the main characters that were the head guys in the beginning of Outlander, one stays, one doesn't,
Mhm.
started going to different places around Scotland on through a motor van, and I think the show was called Men with the Kilts or something, Men with Kilts.
Okay.
But it was like a way that you could tie in and be like, hey, we can't do the show, but we can do this to
Mhm.
remind you we're still working on the show, but we can't do the show, but we'll give you this snippet into, what our characters would feel like in today's time almost. So it was a little bit of fun.
Hmm. I
Linda
remember seeing.
says,
I remember seeing. I remember seeing. Shows on haunted Scotland and everything. And you're talking about the magical stones, and it automatically takes me to the fairies. And there is a
right,
castle in Scotland that has supposedly. They made an agreement. The fairy girl was able to marry the prince and everything for like 20 years, but that was it. Then after 20 years, she had to go back. And supposedly in this castle, there is the fairy flag hanging in it. The flag that was presented to the lord of the castle by the fairy king or leader or whatever, and it's hanging in a frame on the wall. And I always thought that was really interesting because I mean
that
they
would be, yeah,
I'm not
that
like I
would be
don't
cool.
yeah. I was trying to remember. Hold on, I was trying to remember the name of the castle. Um,
Well, we're approaching our hour while you look that up. Are you okay to go a little longer or do you need to go?
um, maybe maybe a little, not a whole lot.
Yeah, I'm not talking another hour, but no, just a few minutes to answer some questions. So
Sure.
Linda's asking, is that castle in Scotland? Yes, we're looking up the name of it. And she also says, thank you, Michael, for catching up with the paranormal tie in to Outlander. You're welcome. And she says, the other reason the show is not on Prime TV is they have realistic scenes. It is X rated. Yes, they do have quite a lot of style of, you know how like Saving Private Ryan came out and they said this is going to show the true horrors of war. Well, Outlander shows the true horrors of what life was like and what could happen to you
Hmm.
during there, like being whipped or raped. They don't hold back. They show it.
This is going to be at Dunvegan Castle in Scotland.
Dunvegan?
Yep, Dunvegan, Dunvegan Castle.
I'll have to put that one on my list because
Yeah.
that would be pretty cool to come up with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what is coming up for you? Do you have any events coming up that you want to promote or you're going to be attending?
Well, I'm going to be. I actually just started working with Bloody Mary on a project. She has actually leased. Where Marie Laveau's original house was torn down, and the one that exists, that is in its place right now, was actually built in 1902. But she's leased it for a year, and she wants to do some events there. Um, and so I'm helping her with that. She's maybe down the line she can get people, pay people to come in. But for right now, she's hoping to get some people that are already coming to town, and if they want to come into the house and do readings, or if they want to set up their books for sale or something like that. Um, but it's actually right next door to um, Marie Laveau's boarding house that has been converted into a B&B, or actually it's a hotel because every room has its own bathroom. So I'm working with her on that, and then of course I still help her with the tours. I still help her with the ghost hunts. Um, this year, because of my illness last year, um, I'm kind of limited on when I can travel. Um, but I'm hoping in it's either September or November. I can't remember. Going to Mass Paracon, that's hosted by Sam Baltrusis. If you ever get the chance to go to one of his cons, you need to go because Sam is so awesome. I love Sam. And then I think we're going to be going in October to Vulture City Paracon, which is hosted by Jay and Marie Yates, and it's done in Vulture City. It's an old mining town.
And that's in Nevada.
Nope, that's in Arizona.
Oh, Arizona? I thought it was
Yep.
Nevada.
Nope, it's right outside of Wickenburg, Arizona.
Okay.
And so I haven't. People keep yelling at me because every time I go to a con, I end up on the East Coast, and everybody's wanting me to go to the West Coast, and I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So I'm having to try and get out to the West Coast a little bit. Um, so I've got those two cons planned, and trying to help Bloody Mary get this project off the ground right now. So if any other if any others pop up um, that I am able to go to, I will go. Um, you're welcome, Linda. Um, uh, I'll go, but um, after my two surgeries last year, this year is going to be pretty slim for me. I've got to plan carefully.
Right.
So,
And again, I'm glad you pulled through because
me too. Me too. Like,
we're
it was,
so.
It
So
was not
everybody
fun, but
knows.
it was okay. Do
Yeah,
I?
I was gonna say. So everyone knows we're good friends. So I was talking to her while this was going on, so that I knew about that,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't bring up stuff like that because that's personal. So that's why when she brought it up, I was like, yes, I was aware, and that's why I'm not pushing like you need to go do this, you need to go do that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but right now it's been a while since I've been on investigation, so I'm kind of going through withdrawal, and so I need to go soon.
That
So I'm
is
gonna.
the worst withdrawal.
It is. It is. Except for I have been working on my fourth book for about 6 years now, and I've got the worst writer's block, and I'm like, I got to figure out something because I know where I want it to go. I know where it is, and I know where I want it to go. It's just that the goop in between that's is snagging me. But
Yeah,
you would think with me being um, laid up as much as I have been, and then working as much as I have been, I would draw some energy to do that somehow. But um, I'll get back to it. It's just a matter of time.
yep. Linda says sending healing wishes. Just baby yourself. Take the time.
I wish I could, but thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That comment. Take the time. That sounds so familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Because I mean, after my second surgery, exactly 2 weeks later, I went back to work, and so that was a challenge.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, but
I remember talking to you about it, going, "Are you sure you're ready? Are you
yes,
sure
you did.
you don't
Yes, you
want to
did.
take the time to heal?"
You got onto me several times. Yes, you did.
But I
But then I
trust
had to
you
get,
enough that if you say you're ready, I'm gonna take you at your word and say, "Okay, you're ready."
but I did get the opportunity to go. Getting everything back in order and everything. I did get the opportunity um, that I'm also working at the World War II Museum, which is fascinating. If you ever come to New Orleans, stay off Bourbon Street. Go to the World War II Museum. Bourbon Street will do nothing but disappoint you. Um, but yeah, working at the World War II Museum has given me a whole other respect for the military and those who serve in the military and feeling passionate about that. So,
Awesome. So one question I have for you to kind of start wrapping things up is
hmm
being that you've been in it for so long and been on break as well. What advice do you have for people about not burning out in the paranormal field?
not burning out.
Like investigating so much that all of a sudden it's like they're like, oh, I just I'm done.
That's kind of hard because it's paranormal investigating for me is ironic because I am the least patient person on the planet, and that's all it takes to do paranormal investigating is patience. But keep researching different locations and go to places that excite you. The information that you have, it excites you, um and don't that's one thing I think that frustrates a lot of people and burns people out a lot is that they do watch the TV shows and things don't happen in rapid succession like that in real life. Usually when you see somebody doing EVPs, I've sat in the dark by myself for 3 hours and have gotten nothing. But then I'll go somewhere else and I'll be in there 10 minutes and I'll get all the whole sentence. So don't take what you see on TV as that's really exactly how it is. And
Right.
it's just um
That is so true.
yeah, it's not a good idea because like people go for the first time and when you say it out loud, you go, dang, that does sound boring. Okay, go sit in this room in the dark for 2 hours with a tape recorder and just ask questions. And and once you say it out loud, you go, dang, that does sound boring. But it's, and 99% of it, I think you can agree with me. 99% of it, we can explain it away, but it's that 1% that keeps us going.
Right.
And I've seen it enough times. I've seen the 1% enough times that, it's kept me going for almost 30 years now. And I believe in it, and that, pay attention to your feelings. Yeah, I agree, Linda. I agree with you.
Yeah, and
One of the things that I have learned, I have watched some of these shows, and occasionally, and I'm going, they ask, can you do this again? And I think you and I've had this conversation, Michael. I said, can you do this again? Well, they obviously can, or they wouldn't have done it the first time. The question is, will they? Will they do it again? That's the question to ask them. Will you do this again?
right. And I
Because,
think, yeah, and as we're talking, I sometimes take the stance of you're right, and sometimes I'll be like, well, it took a lot of energy for them to do it the first time. Do they have enough energy to do it a second time? Is why I would say, can you? But yeah, it's like that's one of the things in our field is because we don't know what conditions are like for them.
right.
And we have to watch how we phrase our questions because we could be insulting the spirit and they're going to be like, you know what? If you think I'm not able to do this again, I'm out.
I'm not, you're like, hey, I'm not a show pony. I'll do it whenever I want to, not when you tell me to.
Right.
So you've got to speak to them like you would want to be spoken to. And I take that stance on it. Because asking me, can you do something or will you do something, that's two totally different things.
Right. And even still is I catch myself doing it and I feel kind of bad doing it is like I'll say, can you knock? And I'll hear the knock and go, thank you. Can you do it again to make sure I heard,
Mm-hmm.
that we're talking to you? It's like we're saying to them, yeah, I don't believe you did that.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, why do we need validation that you did what we asked you to do by
Right.
doing it again?
Well, and not only that, but I see different investigations that I've been on and things that I've watched and everything. And I'm like, they ask, will you, can you come sit down beside me? Can you touch my hand? And then it happens and they freak out. And I'm like, you asked them to. You
I know.
asked them to do this and you're going to freak out.
Yeah, we were actually laughing on Facebook on a meme that somebody posted that is a spirit that's sitting there and the investigator goes, can you make a sound? And they make a sound and they go bolting out of the room scared and the ghost is sitting there looking at it like this going like you
You
asked
asked.
me to make the sound, why are you running away?
Right. It was just like when I was at the Bel Air house in Ohio and I'm sitting upstairs. I was up in the attic and I'm sitting there, and I had to keep that in mind because I'm sitting here. I'm going, okay, you can touch my hand if you want to. And I held my hand out, and sure enough, something grazed the palm of my hand. And I started to jerk away, and I'm like, wait a minute, no, I asked them to do this. And so then it became fascinating. I'm like, ooh, will you do it again? Because it was just like, it wasn't scary. It's actually, it was just like, ooh, I asked them to do something. They did it. That's fascinating. Let's go again. But it's,
Yeah, it's kind of funny hearing you say you would ask, could do it again. I'm sitting here on this side laughing, going, "Yeah, what you really said is, hey, if you're gonna be grabbing my hand, you better buy me a drink first."
you know me too well.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh,
oh
that's
yeah.
another place you should go check out. Is
Oh
Bel Air House in Bel Air, Ohio. That place is very, very next level.
yeah. So Linda says our own personal transformation totally supports communicating with spirits and ghosts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I communicate on investigations. Like I said, I'm not sensitive or psychic in any way, shape, or form, but I'm still going to speak with them, speak with them, not to them, speak with them and communicate like I would want to be communicated with.
Yeah.
Because I
And
mean, at the end of the day, this was a living person at one time.
right. And the funny thing about you and I is we have a similar investigation style of we'll start off in a group and then we'll go off and do our own thing. And we'll
Yes.
like, I remember investigating with you at one location, and I'm like, I went off and did my thing, you went off and did your thing, and then it's like we turn around and we're like, wait, where did you go?
Yes.
And it's like it's so funny because we're constantly saying to people, don't investigate by yourself, and then
Hmm.
it's like we go off and investigate by ourselves.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Because it tends to, if there are too many people around, I'm like, you need people need to stop talking. I'm trying to do this. I'll stop talking, and then I'll go off, and be quiet and do my thing off on my own. But yeah, you're right. I'm a hypocrite in that way.
No, well, what I find myself saying is when I do it is going, I know I'm safe and I'm protected, and that the people that I'm around
Hmm.
know me enough that if I am off on my own, that they have a general idea of where I'm at, so it's not like I'm going to be left at a location,
Yeah. Yeah.
or if I'm like quiet for like I'm not seen for 20 minutes that everyone's freaking out that something happened to me. But at the same token, if like 45 minutes goes by and I haven't said a word or appeared, they're
Hmm.
going to go looking for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
level of
I've
trust
done
we have.
that. I've done that, like at the hospital in Mineral Wells. You went off on your own, and I went off on my own, and then we go looking for each other. Go, Michael, where'd you go? Amy, where'd
Yeah,
you go?
I know. We were like, I wanted to tell you about this experience, and you're like, I had this experience. And we're like, we finally caught up with each other. We're like, yeah, we had these experiences, but yeah, it's probably gone now.
Hey, but at least we had a good time,
Yep.
and we got to investigate a really cool place. I'm
Yeah.
good with that.
So, real quick, and we'll start wrapping up. Linda says, I noticed that first responders have the kind of patience that we can practice. They are our first teachers of patience, if not our loved ones. Lots of laughs. That
Hmm.
is true sometimes. Sometimes I think first responders are responding in panic mode a little bit to make sure everything goes on. So they're not always patient, but they are more patient than most. I will say that.
Hmm.
And then she says, just tell him, Amy. Wow, Linda's starting to get to know me well. Michael's lost. Where is he? I have heard that so many times.
I know you're not lost. You just wandered off on your own, and we'll find you eventually.
Well, what's funny is sometimes I may be like on the other side of like a tree line, and I'll be like, all of a sudden I'll hear, oh man, we lost Michael. And I'm like, I'm right here.
I know where I am.
I'm not lost.
I know where I am.
No.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have any other questions? Because I'm gonna wrap this up. I have to be at work at 4:30 in the morning. So
Yep. So I want to say thank you for coming on.
thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you to Linda and everybody else in the chat group.
Mm-hmm.
And as I promised to a lot of people, if you keep up with TikTok and some other posts, that I had a surprise for this episode. I know a lot of you probably figured I had forgotten because I didn't mention it in the beginning, but the surprise is for the ending of the show. So we have a new style to end. We're going to try out tonight. So let me know what you all think. And without further ado, here we go.
You have just listened to The Energy That Surrounds Us with your hosts, Michael Koff and Carla Norris. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.